All right, next up we've got a game here from Mark, so let's take a look and see how this goes. And I love the detailed annotations I can already see. And you gave some interesting thoughts on this in your email, saying that you thought you did okay until you botched the end game, and you think you need to improve psychologically. So that's very interesting. Let's go ahead and take a look and see how this went. So you had the black pieces. Okay, we get a Nimzo Indian. A3 takes, and you said you don't know too much about this pawn structure, but you see he is destroying his pawn structure. Well, this pawn structure is kind of the whole point of the Nimzo Indian, right? Although white doesn't always play a3. So it's very important to understand the trade-off between white's doubled pawns and the space advantage they're going to get. Very often white tries to play for f4, e4, and getting this big attack on the king side and center. And black has some interesting ideas to go after this c4 pawn. For example, b6, bishop a6, knight c6 to a5, eventually striking with d5. This knight even comes to d6 in some cases. I'm not saying to always do this like a robot and just play these 7 moves, but there's a lot of positions where black can just bring everything they have against this c4 pawn, and it's very hard for white to defend. So let's see. d5, no, that's not right. Yeah, you just accomplished this whole big goal of doubling the pawns, and we just talked about in the previous video here, when you put the pawn on d5, the double pawns become irrelevant. White can trade off the double pawns whenever they want. So I don't like d5 here. It's probably playable. We probably get some position from like the Ragozin, which is like a hybrid of the Nimzo Indian and the Queen's Gambit declined. But if you want to know more about playing this specific position, I would check out my video on the Nimzo Indian defense. I have a free video out there on YouTube. Just search for like Nimzo Indian chess pathways, and I think I talk about this exact position, and you can see what I'm talking about bringing pressure against the c4 pawn. But okay, let's get on to kind of the middle game here. Queen d6 seems a bit like superficial for me. You don't want to spend time chasing the bishop at the pawn and ruin where I was going to castle. I guess that makes some sense. To me, like if you don't want to chase the bishop, that's fine, but why not just knight d7 and keep on developing? I guess queen d6 is reasonable, though, I guess you could say. And it certainly justifies it when white just plays bishop takes f6. That just helps you out. So it takes, h3, kind of a waste of a move, castle, good. Okay, that's reasonable, good, this is all good. c5. So when you played c5, did you consider kind of the implications that you might end up with an isolated d-pawn? Although I guess here it's not so easy for white to just give you an isolated d-pawn because c3 is hanging as well. Kind of a good thing to keep in mind. But you said you want him to divert his pawn, and even if he did not, I could attack his bishop and spread out. Okay, I mean, decent thoughts, but you have to consider the long-term implications there on the pawn structure whenever you push a pawn. And I think the Module 3 material gets a lot more into that. But let's see. Bishop takes, queen to b1, and you blunder the queen. And he misses it. Okay, so what's going on here? You blundered your queen, you thought he was trying to attack the b-pawn. Again, you can't, you don't try to read your opponent's mind. You really have to consider all of the checks, captures, threats they're going for. But I do understand what you're saying. This is one of the most common causes of like just out of the blue, one-move blunders. You try to ask for the checks, captures, threats. You say, aha, they're threatening the b-pawn. And then you don't think, what are the other checks, captures, or threats my opponent might have? So you blunder the queen. They don't take it, so I guess we keep going. Of course, something big you have to kind of learn from there. When you blunder it again, and he doesn't take it again. This is weird. Okay, so you take on b1, takes, b6. I guess that makes sense. c4... Again, okay, so your comment here is I pushed my pawn up. Yes, I can see you pushed your pawn up. You don't have to tell me that. I want to know why, and what you consider to be the upsides and downsides of a move like this. To me, it's a pretty big decision to push this pawn and give up your pressure on d4. I'm just worried your d5 pawn might be weak after something like possibly rook b5. Although I guess you have sufficient resources, but again, you have to be calculating this and telling me this, not just like I felt like pushing my pawn up, so I pushed it up. Again, be concrete. Checks, captures, threats, all that Module 2 stuff to really be focusing on mastering right now. I think black is still okay here, though. Okay, check. Okay, you defend your pawn. Did you consider knight c6? I think it's fine, but again, you have to look at it. You tried protecting your pawn chain from the base. Okay, good. Did you consider knight takes f2? That's a check, capture, threat, right? You have to consider it. I don't see any note you made here that you considered this stuff. I feel like you're not being concrete, and you're just like playing moves based on how you feel. Like, I feel like gaining space, let's push a pawn. I feel like defending my pawn chain from the base, let's do this. I don't feel like you're going through this process of looking for every single check, capture, or threat every single turn. Okay, d8, f3, again, he pressures my knight, that creates another outpost. Okay, knight g3, rook d6. Okay, again, you don't have to give comments like this. I moved my rook up. I can see you moved your rook up. You don't have to give comments just for the sake of like writing something. I know I say to give comments every single turn, but there's not much value in a comment like I moved my rook up. So please tell me like what you're actually trying to do and what you're thinking about, the checks, captures, threats you're considering. And if you feel like there's nothing of substance going on, you don't have to write a comment every single turn. If you're just going to write, I moved my rook up, you don't have to write a comment there. Let's see, king d2, a6. I push my pawn up to chase off the rook. Again, I would have liked to see something like that you wanted to play b5 and shut off the file, not just like I pushed my pawn up to attack the rook. But okay, rook b2, f5, f5. So what's the purpose? You said you're distracted by his knight. Okay, but what does that have to do with playing f5? I don't see the correlation there. I feel like that's like saying, I'm afraid of dogs, so I ate a sandwich this morning. Right? There's no correlation between these two things. What does f5 have to do with being scared of the knight? I could see f6 being a move you play if you're scared of the knight, but I'm scared of the knight, so I hand it a permanent outpost and push my f-pawn past it. I'm not seeing the correlation. Please be more detailed in these comments. Really tell me what's actually going on in your thought process. Don't just come up with a 5-word description of the moves you're playing. King e1. Now I see that he is chasing after my knight. You think a weak point is severely underestimating the usefulness of the king. I think you're being too specific if you're trying to say that your weakness is underestimating the usefulness of the king. I think you really just have to focus on all those things we talked about in Module 2. I can already tell that's going to be the big takeaway for you from this game. And that's okay. That's going to be the big takeaway for a lot of our students here. I think most of the students in this program could see massive rating gains if they really just focused on mastering that Module 2 material. Once you start every single turn really being specific about the checks, captures, threats, and being super, super concrete, then we can talk about these nitty-gritty details about, okay, are you underestimating the usefulness of a king? Are you not considering bishop takes knight often enough, like I talked about I wasn't doing as an expert? But until you master the fundamentals, we can't really get that granular. So let's see. Rook e8, still distracted by his knight. I don't know what that means. Okay, king f2. This is where you knew you messed up. Why? Why did you mess up? Why can't you just play your knight back? I don't see what the big problem is here for black. Again, it's just a 6-sentence like thought. Like I want to see concreteness. Checks, captures, threats. What are you calculating? Knight h5. You retreat, but my one thing that was going for me I did not guard. No idea what you're talking about. g4. Takes. Knight f6. b5, good. You try to block his double rooks with my pawn. That's a good annotation. Yes, that's what you should be doing. They try to double on this file. Now, did you consider what happens if they play a4, trying to bust the file open? They play it next turn. You say he tries to break this apart, and that's true. Did you consider that before you played b5? Because if you're looking for your opponent's ideas, I don't think it's hard to find. You really want to get in that habit of always looking for your opponent's ideas. So let's see. So you play rook b8, and doesn't that just lose a pawn? You have 2 defenders here. White has 3 attackers. And again, your comment, I try to defend. Don't try, calculate. Again, I feel like it's just a feeling. Like, okay, my b-pawn's under attack. I feel like defending it. Let's see if it works. No, you can't think like that. You have to calculate and be super concrete about what's going to happen. You're not allowed to play any move in chess until you accurately calculate the opponent's checks, captures, threats. So don't tell me you try to defend. Like, it either works or it doesn't, and you have to figure it out. You can't just hope it works. You don't have enough defense here on the pawn, and it's not hard to see that. 2 defenders, 3 attackers, right? So yeah, probably taking is a better try. And you mentioned that later on. Yeah, you should, you say here, you should have taken with your pawn because he ups me in material. Okay. So now you're down a pawn. Foolishly, I try to trade knights down in material. Well, I don't know. A rook in game's easier to draw, isn't it? A rook in game is one of the harder endgames to win for the side who's up a pawn. So let's see how this goes. Now, I don't think you can hold on here because you're tied down to your pawn. Yeah, you're now down a pawn, which is deadly in the endgame. I don't know. You can draw some rook in games down a pawn. I think it's a bigger problem that your rook is so tied down. So let's see here. King f7. Okay. You give lots of comments, but none of them are concrete. Okay, you just blunder a pawn. Let's see what you say about that. Again, here we go. I try to protect my pawns. Again, it either works or it doesn't. There's no try. And certainly after you lose g6 pawn, there's no coming back from that. So I think you have enough of a good takeaway here from this game. And don't feel bad. Again, everyone kind of starts out here. It's very hard to get in this habit of being concrete, but it's just absolutely mandatory. There's nothing you can do in chess that's going to make a difference until you get this down. So if you have questions, please reach out to me. This is something you should be practicing in our correspondence game as well. Every single turn, why aren't you, typing in the chat menu what your checks, captures, threats are you're considering, what your candidate moves are, which one you want to play, what you think my checks, captures, threats are going to be in response, blunder checking, making sure the move is safe. You have to do that before you make any move in chess, always. You can't just say, I hope it works, or I'm trying to defend the pawn. Figure it out. It either works or it doesn't. You have to know that before you make the move. So really keep working on that Module 2 material. I can tell it's really going to help you out. Keep working on tactics trainers every day, and just be way more concrete when you're playing these games, every single turn. And play longer time controls if you have to. Next up, you've got a couple games here from Jinlin. So let's take a look. You have the black pieces in this first one. Welcome to the program. I know this is your first Master Mentorship video, so let's see how this goes. Okay, so you play this Nimzo Indian. Bishop g5, h6. I don't know too much about the theory here. I don't play this with either color. Again, you don't have to give these like obvious comments like chasing the bishop. I can see that. Okay, so this is all still theory. I'm just curious when this diverges. Yeah, c5, theory, knight f3. Queen a5 has not really ever been played here. I guess it's been played twice, but most players just castle. So let's see what you think here. Okay, queen a5, furtherly pressuring his knight. Yeah, that is true. There are some cases where when the bishop's missing from the defense of the queen side, you can try to go after this knight with knight e4, queen a5, this kind of stuff. So I'm kind of curious to see how this goes. So queen a5, okay, queen c2, defending the knight. And you can't play knight e4 yet, or can you? I'm not sure if you calculated it out. You don't really mention any consideration given here. So if knight e4 and queen takes, my thought was, do you have bishop takes c3? It looks like this is very good for you, so you probably could have played knight e4 here. And that actually looks pretty good for me for black. I don't really see how white can defend this too well. If they play rook c1, there's concerns with the a-pawn, right? So I think this could have been a good response here. I don't think white's queen c2 reaction was very good against your queen a5 idea. So I think you missed a nice chance here with knight e4. Again, checks, captures, threats. Got to consider all of them. In the game, you played c takes d4, knight takes d4, and d6. You forgot that d4 has a knight instead of a pawn, so I played this tempo wasting move to support e5. Okay, I think you really just have to get castled, and you also have to be worried about this doubled pawn situation. Just some things to think about. Again, I feel like there's no real calculation going on here. This is the same problem a lot of students have in this program. I love the annotations, by the way. They really help me to see how you're thinking. But I feel like a lot of what you think is just very general. Like, I want to play e5, so let's try to make that happen. And there's no concreteness going on there. Move by move, you're not looking for all the checks, captures, and threats and being super concrete. Like, you saw how I assessed this knight e4 thing, right? After queen c2, I said, okay, knight e4 looks interesting. It's a candidate move. But can I just say knight e4 and give the comment, increasing pressure on the c3 knight? No, you can never do that. You have to calculate it out very specifically and look for all the checks, captures, threats, calculate out the lines. Do you see how I did that? You have to do that every single turn. But okay, takes, d6. I think this is still, like, I guess fairly reasonable for black. It's not like this is horrible. Bishop c5. So I guess you don't have to worry about b4 yet because the rook's not defended. Let's see. You don't really give any comments in this part of the game. e3, knight d7. Bishop d3, knight e5. And you keep saying, what a mess on the queen side. I'm not too sure what you're referring to. I think there's just lots of tactics going on is what you're talking about. Hopefully you're still aware of the b4 thing and why it doesn't work. Okay, you are. He castles. You said he breaks the pin. Knight takes, queen takes. Taking on d4 seems like a pretty big concession to me, but maybe it's okay. Queen takes. Yeah, now white is better due to the space advantage. So was there some other way we could play here? I guess it's kind of tough. Like, I guess my first instinct was queen d8, but it doesn't feel very safe for me for black to play this way. This bishop is still going to be kind of awkwardly placed. I'm worried about b4, followed by knight b5, followed by rook d1. d6 is super weak, isn't it? So I think you kind of went wrong in there. And I think white already, like you said, has a pretty big advantage. So takes. Yeah, you really missed your chance to play knight e4. That would have been a really a big difference. So now queen d8. d6 is just so weak, though. I don't think you really ever considered the implications of this. But it's a backwards pawn on an open file, and don't feel bad for kind of missing that detail. I talk about that more in Module 3. But it's hard to imagine d6 surviving here, especially after you trade off the dark bishop. I mean, there's knight b5, there's rook d1. d6 is a huge, huge target. Wow, well, okay, not anymore. I don't think that's necessarily White's best reaction. Takes. Oh, they don't even trade queens. Okay. I'm not really sure why White wants to go for this. I do understand White wanting to blow the center open when they have a lead in development, but not by trading away your d6 weakness. Queen d7, blocking in the bishop, I don't understand that either. Why not queen e7? Seems to make more sense to me. You keep saying things like another wasted tempo. Again, just like I've said to everyone else, be a lot more specific. Okay, if it's a wasted tempo, then why did you play it, and what would you do different now, and what's your takeaway? See the big difference between telling me that and saying another wasted tempo? Rook 81, queen c6, takes. Your pawn structure breaks. I don't know. I mean, now your bishop has an active diagonal, which it didn't before, so it's not the end of the world. Takes. Okay, yeah, White has the better pawn structure, but it's definitely better than what could have happened if they just target your d6 pawn. And you say, now you can't castle. Well, you don't want to castle now. We're just playing some endgame. The king's going to be good on e7, right? So knight e4, king e7, hopefully. Yeah, the king's good there. Rook b8, attack his b pawn, b4, rook g8. Okay, the g file, attack the c pawn. His knight has an outpost. Again, very, very general, very observational. I want to hear what's going on in your head, what your thought process is, and what you're calculating. Not like a board announcer, just like saying, oh, the knight has an outpost, the g file, the b file. Really tell me what's going on in your head and the calculation going on. And this might be a good thing because this might illustrate that this is how you're thinking during the game. So don't feel bad if that's the case, but this kind of highlights that you're kind of thinking at a very surface level, right? And that can be okay in a position like this. There's no immediate checks, captures, threats, but we saw earlier how it hurt you when you missed something like knight e4. So, okay, let's see how this goes. f4, rook b5. Okay, you want to play a5. Good comment there. Yeah, you might want to push a5 and try to break up this structure on the queen side for White. Rook d3, f5. Okay, a5. Now the White b pawn is pinned. Not really, because the knight defends it, but I see what you're saying. Rook e1, takes. Okay, they defend your threats. You'd like to move this bishop somehow. It's just kind of awkward with the knight kind of dominating the bishop. It has no good squares to develop to. So let's see how this goes. Rook d2. Okay. King f6. I feel like you're just going to get pinned, though. Okay. And here I don't understand what you're doing with the comments. So you said the only way to decrease the pressure is to blunder the rook away? Well, yeah, it's too late now. Where was the comment the previous turn when you played bishop b7? Right, that's when you should have been telling me what's going on here. I don't think you realized the problem until you walked right into this. Bishop e7, rook a7. It's too late to do the thinking now. Now you started thinking and you said, oh no, the only way to get out of this is rook d7. But you have to think about this the move before and the move before that. When you played bishop b7, were you asking what are all of White's checks, captures, and threats? Because it's not hard at all to find rook a7. I know you would find rook a7 if you had the white pieces in this position, right? So let's see. Now there shouldn't really be a way out of this, but let's just see what happens. Yeah, there's no way you defend an endgame like this, not with the light bishop trying to fight the rook. Yeah. And you say there's a blunder, but I don't know what else you do. Like, okay, you can say h4 is a blunder, but there's nothing else Black can do. White's just going to win. You have no way to stop the pawn. The bishop can't fight the rook in a position like this. And White wins. So it really came down to, I mean, you kind of misplayed the opening. You missed your chance, first of all, with knight e4 after the bad queen c2, and then you got this d6 pawn super weak. But then you kind of hung in there. You did a good job fighting back, by the way. You should feel good about that. But then you just played bishop b7 without even seeing rook a7, which it's hard to imagine how that happens if you're going through this process of looking for the checks, captures, and threats. Okay, and you have another game here. Let's take a look. You have black pieces. Okay, we get, I don't even know what to call this yet. Let's see if White plays d4 or not. Okay, this is like a Nimzovich defense. This is like the game started with e4, knight c6. So we're playing a Nimzovich defense. I'm not sure why you're playing this exactly? Like, I saw you responded to d4 with e6 last game. These are kind of unconventional opening choices, especially for your rating level. But okay, let's not worry about that too much. Let's really focus on those fundamentals, the checks, captures, threats, the thought process, all the Module 2 stuff. And once you master that, we can really get into some opening stuff in the later modules. But okay, d4, bishop g4, bishop b5, he pins the knight, yep, bishop d7. Again, I don't think you're considering the implications of what if white plays bishop b5 next turn. You're just kind of playing moves because they feel good. Bishop g4 pins his knight, and then next turn you come back. And I don't think you have to come back, by the way. Although maybe you do. This is kind of awkward for black, right? There's no good way to stop the threat of d5 because you just never secured space for yourself. And at this rating level, you want to secure space for yourself. I wouldn't play these weird openings, but okay, let's see how it goes. Bishop b7, e5, takes, knight g4. I want to get his knight away, but I think knight d5 will be better because the c-pawn is blocked. I'm not too sure what that means. You're talking about white playing knight d5? So, okay, you have two attackers on this pawn, but if you can't win this pawn back, white's just going to kick your knight away eventually. So let's see. Bishop takes c6. I don't think white should play that at all. That's a big concession. That makes your bishop good, or it leaves all the pressure. Surely white has a better move here. Like, I was just thinking like bishop f4 or something. Develop a piece, defend this pawn, threaten h3. But okay, they help you out. They help your bishop get better into the game. Bishop f4. Queen b8. That is a very surprising move. Why queen b8? So again, I don't want to trade queens. Well, okay, so why don't you want to trade queens? You have to tell me why the queen trade is bad. You have to weigh the options against each other. Why is trading queens worse than not trading queens? And I think you don't really know, and you didn't try to know. You just kind of had a feeling. Like, I don't want to trade queens, like an emotional gut reaction, so let's play queen b8. Again, concreteness is the #1 thing to work on. And if you need help with it, just let me know. You should be talking to me in your correspondence game against me, really walking me through your thought process every turn so I can help you out. That's really going to be beneficial for you. Knight d5. Okay, queen back to d8. Okay, now you trade queens. I guess you've changed your mind, and you don't even know yourself. You forgot why you traded queens. I guess we could have a really weird early repetition here with queen b8. Takes, rook c8. That feels strange to me. That's not an open file. And you give it with no comment. So if you're afraid of like e6 or something, why not just play e6 yourself? I mean, you have to play this anyway, right? To open your bishop, and then it stops all of white's threats to the c7 pawn. I don't see a reason to let the rook passively defend it like that. But okay, h3. What? g5. And again, your comment, I attack his bishop. Was there any calculation here at all about what's going on? You've just met a threat with a counter threat, which is very dangerous. There's multiple hanging pieces, and I don't think you did any calculation whatsoever. I think, again, it's just like a gut emotional feeling. He attacks me, let's attack him. Let's see what happens. But the pawn's not even safe. And I just don't understand what's going on here. This isn't what I teach in Module 2. It's not at all what I said you should be doing in Module 2. So really make sure you go through the Module 2 material. Let's see how this goes. G5, okay, they take. You take on f3, takes. Okay, it worked out for you. I don't know if you calculated all that from the beginning, but if you did, you have to let me know. Don't just say you played g5 to attack his bishop. Again, I feel like I'm listening to a sports commentator who's like only half paying attention, and they see a move g5 be played by the player, and they say, oh, what's the purpose? Well, it attacks the bishop. Let's see what happens. So does this idea work? I guess your point is if the bishop takes, you have this tactic. And if you saw that, then there can be a justification for this move. I just don't like the thought process you say, I attack the bishop. You have to calculate. But maybe you did the calculation. I don't know. Because it looks like it works out for you if they do that. Now, I don't think it works out, because if nothing else, they could take with the knight. And now, if you take on g2, I think they're just rook g1. And this is a very complex position to evaluate. I don't think you can escape here without material losses. And if you tried to assess this and you just missed this line with rook g1, that's fine, but I don't think you really did the calculation. But okay. Bishop takes, you got what you wanted. Knight takes e5. Why not take the free f3 pawn? Not a good move. It weakens the light squares, but good thing he don't have a light square bishop. Again, very general, and you don't tell me why you don't take on f3. So it's a check, capture, or threat, right? So you have to consider it. f4, I just want to see kind of a general thing about how the rest of the game goes here. You kind of give a lot of moves with no comments here later on. But I think you have your big takeaway. We've talked about what you really have to focus on. This position here, I mean, it's already tough for black. I'm just curious to see how it goes. Okay, you blunder a pawn. I think there's no way to save it at that point. But you have your big takeaways, right? You know what you have to work on, and if you don't, please let me know so I can help you out. I would spend a lot of time on tactics trainers to build up your pattern recognition, and then just when you play games, play as long of a time control as you need, and just make sure every single turn you go through the exact thought process I talk about in Module 2. Next up, we've got Bernie, and you annotated the game you played against me, so good job. Let's take a look here. And I saw what happened here early on. This is a very good teachable moment for anyone who starts getting into opening preparation. So we get a Ruy Lopez, A6, and you said you thought you were working from memory in this opening. And so that's why you played A6 and you didn't calculate what happens if I take here and then take on E5. So very important thing, unless you're 100% sure you've seen the position before, the exact position, every piece in the exact same location, you can't just blitz out a move and say it's from memory, right? Even if you think you're 100% sure the move is from memory, why not still just ask for the opponent's candidate move? Say, okay, I'm pretty sure A6 is the move here, but let's just calculate, let's make sure. What are white's checks, captures, threats? What could happen? And it's not very hard to see that I can just take on C6 and take on E5. And your, the typical queen D4 trick's not going to work because this pawn's defended. So knight F3 would just chase the queen away, of course, just to show it. Often in the Ruy Lopez, black has this defensive resource if white tries to win this pawn, forking the knight and pawn, but not anymore, not with the rook on E1, right? Just knight F3 and white's much better. So, very important takeaway there. Never just play robotically. I would just say that for your rating level right now, Bernie, just never do that. Never just play a move and say it's from memory, unless it's like move 1 or 2 and you're 100% sure. So here I just want a pawn. Castles, D4, knight C3, bishop B4. Can't really move much at the moment. Yeah, I kind of control the whole center, which makes it very hard for you. I thought maybe trying to break with C5 at some point could be good, trying to open the center a bit. You do have the bishop pair. That's some compensation you do have, and it gets rid of your doubled pawns. I'm just not sure how early you can really go for that, because you have to watch out for D5 as well. So queen D3, knight D7, trying to swap knights. My center is too strong. Okay, A3 back, bishop E3, rook A8. I mean, you're playing decently at this part of the game. You're not blundering. You're getting your pieces into the game. It's just going to be hard to fight against my big center you gave me with the early blunder. So rook 81 and F5. I thought that was a very, very good move. I don't know about, like, objectively, like, what a computer would say about it. But from a practical perspective, I thought it was a good move to force white to think, which is all you can hope for when you're in a position this bad, right? Because now I have to watch out. If I take, I have to watch out for bishop takes F5, some tactics here. And I also have to watch out for you just pushing F4, followed by F3, and trying to really expose my weak light squares, because I don't have a light squared bishop. So I'm not sure if you considered all that, but I really do like the move here, F5. That's a good way to fight back. So I played bishop C1. I just didn't want F4 to come with tempo, if you played it. Now, if you played F4, I might even just play F3, and just try to stabilize everything and maybe even go after this pawn later. But let's see. So rook F6. So the problem there is now my bishop can come to G5 in some cases, which I think eventually happened in the game. But first I played D5, with the point being that I don't think you can take here on E4 with tempo anymore, followed by winning this pawn, because I get to take with the knight, is one possibility, or with the queen is another, trying to X-ray you down the E file. And I was trying to calculate both of these options out, and I thought they would work out very well for white. So you just took on D5 and I took back, but now I eliminate the pawn tension here, which I was pretty happy about. That opens up my my rook too on the E file. So bishop F7, you give some alternatives here. It looks like you've thought about bishop takes D5, but it just doesn't work, right? I have 3 attackers, 2 defenders, and I don't think any of your pins are going to work out because I take with check. I mean, we could look at something like this, but even this doesn't work out for you because I just take with check. You don't have time to take on D1. Hopefully you were looking at some of those lines. You also mentioned rook G6 here. But here, if you play rook G6, I can just take on E6, which you mentioned. Oh, but then you thought, what if you play here to threaten the queen and threaten checkmate? But white was not in a generous mood. Not sure what that means. Hopefully you looked at this and tried to find a refutation here. I highly doubt this works. I think if nothing else, I have queen h3 and there might be something even better. For example, taking on d8 I think just wins. The pawn watches over f7, so I think I just take on d8. But one way or the other, hopefully you refuted this line before you moved on from it. So bishop f7, but now bishop g5 wins material for white. Black has no way out of this now. So b5, takes, h3. And here you actually had to be kind of careful. Your bishops are pretty strong. So I kind of have to, shuffle around a bit and not try to force the issue here. The bishops watch over a lot of squares. It's kind of hard for me to find a plan here, but I knew I should be winning long term. So I eventually untangle. Bishop f7, I bring the queen to f3 just to stop bishop h5, and now I can bring the rook back to d1. So queen d6, rook d1, b4, takes. I'm happy with these exchanges because that's going to make my rook stronger. Bishop takes c3. You said you thought about queen takes b2, but the knight is easily guarded. Yeah, but why not win a pawn, right? I mean, you're already lost, right? Might as well kind of, put me to the test. Trading stuff off isn't going to help you out, right? That just weakens you more on the dark squares. So takes. Now I'm up a pawn plus the exchange. Queen d3, and you don't really love trading queens here, but there's not much else black can do. And this is, again, the kind of position. The bishop can't fight the rook. Not here. And you resign. So yeah, sadly it was kind of an uphill battle for you the whole way after that move 5 blunder. You did some things well to fight back. You found f5, you tried to put me to the test, but after you blunder and let me take the full center, it's not just an extra pawn, it's also the full center you're giving me. You were kind of, up a creek without a paddle from the start. All in all, though, not bad. Just really focus on not making that kind of blunder and be aware of that psychological trap in the opening to think you're playing a move from memory when you're not. Okay, next up we've got a game here from Raleigh. And Raleigh, if I read this correctly, I think this was a daily correspondence chess game that began back in March. So I'm not sure if this is going to be the most beneficial for me to look at, because you've made so much progress since March. I don't think we have to dwell on the mistakes you were making in March. If this was some 3-month game, hopefully you have some more modern games to show me. And I would try to play some live chess games if you can. I know that you've really been trying to focus on, spending as much time as possible to identify all the chess captures threats. Which is great, and that's great for daily games. But if you played some longer time control live games, like a 60-minute game or something, I think that'd be some good practice for you too, to see how you translate all the practice you've done in our daily games, our correspondence games against each other, and how that translates into live chess. But I can look at this. I'm just sure that you've made so much progress since March that, I might be criticizing problems you have that you no longer have when I look at this game. But we can take a look. I know you no longer even play the London system, but let's take a look. Okay, typical London system stuff. Nothing to see here. Okay. In 95. Yeah, so when black plays an early c4 here, I would be pretty happy with white, because that takes all the pressure off your center, and you can eventually try to push e4 if you want to. 95 can also be a plan here, so let's take a look. Bishop b7, castle, takes. Bishop takes. My first instinct was pawn takes, trying to deprive this knight of the f6 square. So then we can play f4, queen h5, lift rooks, swing the knight over. I think we can get a big kingside attack if we have the pawn on e5, whereas trading off the bishop doesn't really appeal to me as much. But let's see how this goes. So takes, f4, f5, knight f3. Not sure here if you consider taking on passant. Of course you have to consider it, but also, yeah, just coming to d4 looks good. You're targeting e6, targeting b5. You're playing pretty well so far in this game. Again, these are probably moves you made months ago, so it's kind of hard to know where you are today based on this. Knight d4, good. Rook f3, okay. This all looks pretty reasonable to me. You're trying to attack on the king side. I feel like black has sufficient drawing resources, though. Or not drawing, but like they have enough to hang in the game. They're not going to get mated. And if you go for any kind of pawn break like g4, it seems very double-edged. But that said, I think you just go for it, I think. You give a lot of moves with no comment. I think you can just take on e4, and whichever way they take, let's say they play d takes c4, we have a very typical good knight versus bad bishop position, right? This bishop's horrible. I mean, it defends some pawns, but this bishop can't really get in on the action. And now, I think you just play g4 and start attacking on the king side. Black doesn't have enough pieces to punish you for opening your king like this. This bishop can hardly participate in the game at all. And you just start trying to open lines on the king side. That's how I would play this, and I think white's better. But okay, rook f3. Okay. And you said here you think you have the game won. So why? Let's see. So takes, queen e1. Oh, you just want to play queen h4, I see. And you're also threatening to take on b4. That's kind of handy. So takes, rook takes g6. So here you think you have him by the shorts, but I don't. Takes, queen h4. Oh, and you just missed rook g7, and the king has an escape, right? And now you're down a rook. And I think there's no way... Well, okay, you cut off the f7 square. Is there any way for black to defend this? So the threat, once again, is queen h8. I like the creativity there. You're trying to cut off the king before you play queen h8. That's good. I just think it's not going to work. So let's see. Queen c1, check, check, check. And they cut you off, and the game's over because you're down a rook. Yeah, so all in all, I think you played this pretty decently. I kind of like your plan. That's one of the strengths of the London system. You know I don't recommend playing the London system, but one of the strengths is it's pretty easy to find a plan in the London. I just think it's bad for your long-term chess development. But here I think the only reason you lost is because you forgot that black could play rook g7 and walk the king away. So just like looking for checks, captures, threats, you have to look for all the defenses here too when you're launching an attack. If you're going to sacrifice a rook for the attack, you better look for every possible way black can try to defend. And I think you just missed one candidate move with rook g7, which happens sometimes. But other than that, you played a decent game. So don't feel bad about this one. It's just kind of a one move blunder there with rook g6. And then finally, Frank just had a very quick win to show me. Not annotated, but that's okay. They just want to show me this quick win. So let's just take a very quick look. Again, if you add the annotations like I talk about in Module 1, I can give some better thoughts, but I guess we can just take a look at this very quickly. You take the center, very good. White's playing kind of weird. You fork them. Yeah, white just kind of blundered very early here and let themselves get forked. Good job finding that. Okay. Nice. Okay, yeah, and white just collapses. Okay, all right, nice win. There's not much I can tell you when white just collapses like that. I would say try to play better opponents. You played someone rated, 200 points below you, so you usually can't learn too much from those games because they're just going to fall apart. But good job. Keep it up. Try to play some harder opponents, and especially if you lose a game, then annotate it, send it to me, and I can give you some feedback. All right, and that's all for this Master Mentorship video. Again, if you have any questions, either about your games or someone else's games, please post them in the group. You can email them to me, whatever you want. I'm here to help you out. I'm a resource for you while you're in this program to make sure you become the best chess player you can be. I hope a lot of those thoughts about the annotations there are helpful. Again, it's nothing I'm trying to criticize you for. It's just that I can give so much better feedback if you're being specific about what you're thinking and not just saying stuff like, I kicked the rook, I pushed because I want the center, I played this to try to defend the pawn, and really force you to be concrete and calculate, because that's really going to help you out, and that's probably alone worth hundreds of rating points to most chess players if you can get in that habit. So keep it up, keep the games coming for the next video, and I will talk to you all soon.